Today we will look at the intriguing narrative of Donato Cervantes, a Peruvian national whose life was irrevocably altered by a chance meeting with entities from another realm. Donato was driving on a road rebuilding project in Juarez, Peru in 1973. Driving through the town of Huaracanga one night, a bright light unexpectedly appeared on the road, flooding his car with a dazzling radiance. Donato was made to halt and stepped out of the car to look into the event. What he then witnessed defied all reason. The light appeared to raise him off the ground. He later saw this as a potential abduction. He thought he was roughly 20 meters above the earth as he climbed, but the light abruptly freed him. Maybe because an incoming truck was so close. Falling upon stony ground, Donato was gravely hurt by the impact. A passing truck witnessed the event and swiftly rushed to his assistance. The truck's couple drove him to a close-by camp for emergency medical care. When he arrived, Donato was in serious condition with several fractures and near death. Confounded, the physicians tried all they could to stabilize him but had little expectation of his survival. Amidst the turmoil of therapy, Donato started to hear voices in his head. Describing these voices as a more adult version of his own, he said they expressed regret for the event and promised their goal was to cure him. The crew labored unrelentingly to keep him alive as night fell and the camp was far from any appropriate hospital. Still, the whispers persisted that he would soon be healed. Donato suddenly lost consciousness from an overwhelming heat running through his body. To the surprise of the camp personnel the next morning, Donato woke up as if nothing had occurred, totally healed. Bloodstains and the signs of his injuries verified the severity of his previous state, therefore indicating that his recovery was nothing less than a miracle. Working as a driver and mechanic for several businesses and the area government, Donato kept at it. Though he never wanted media attention, his narrative started to circulate among people who knew him and had seen the strange happenings surrounding his life. Among the most enigmatic stories was one from an engineer with whom Donato traveled a tremendous distance. In the middle of the night, a 6-hour trip from Juarez to Chacas left their car out of power and petrol. In a region famous for terrorism, this turned into a vital problem. Visibly upset, the engineer lamented the prospect of spending the night in such a hazardous location. Maintaining unexpected serenity, Donato advised the engineer to unwind. He then exited the car with little justification. He came back after a little while. What came next challenged all reason. The car started up fine with no battery or gasoline. Dumbfounded and confused, the engineer could not provide any logical justification for this event. The engineer was left with more questions than answers by the car's unexpected recovery without any apparent technical assistance. Which heightened the enigmatic atmosphere about Donato Cervantes. Living in a shaky house with little conveniences, Donato's family struggled financially. One afternoon, after partying with pals, Donato returned home. Walking down a corridor in the house about 1 or 2 in the afternoon, he fell and broke a glass door with his arm in an attempt to catch himself. Trapped between the shattered door and the floor, he found shards of glass severely embedded in his arm. Cutting veins, arteries, nerves, and tendons, the glass produced great hemorrhage. Blood was all over the scene, which became chaotic. Trapped and sliding in his own blood, Donato could not move. His terrified wife and kids attempted to assist. But the mayhem was too much. The city's dearth of taxis and cars in 1983 made it far more difficult to bring him to a hospital. Neighbors banded together to help the family and get a car to take Donato to the hospital. The procedure took 1 to 2 hours because of the rustic setting of their property, with muddy and stony pathways. Donato lay bleeding on the floor in a terrible scene, unconscious during that period. A car finally came and drove Donato to the hospital. Though still unconscious when he arrived, he momentarily woke up in the car and, under the effects of alcohol, inquired about his pals. His wife, perplexed, assumed he was talking about his drinking friends. Donato, though, appeared to know how serious his situation was. The doctor looked at Donato and listened to the narrative at the hospital. The prognosis was bleak. Donato's arm was so severely injured that amputation was the only option. The announcement crushed his mother, who begged for a substitute. The doctor, nevertheless, maintained that amputation was the appropriate course of action given the severe infection and significant damage. Victoria, Donato's wife, vehemently opposed the amputation. When Donato woke up, she told him what had happened and he turned down the amputation, saying they shouldn't sever his hand. Desperate and with no other options, they went back home to confront the cruel reality of his condition. Donato's condition deteriorated greatly over time. The family's tremendous anguish grew as Donato's right arm was in such terrible condition that he could not work. Though he attempted left-handed chores, Donato's incapacity to provide for his family grew more and more clear. The formerly useless arm started to seriously infect and stank because of gangrene. Though his condition was worsening, Donato kept claiming he didn't require amputation, sure his friends would arrive to cure him. Victoria, who was doubtful by nature, did not believe in the enigmatic companions Donato mentioned, which created conflict at home. Especially given the family's terrible financial and medical condition. She found it unimaginable that these alleged entities could assist. As Donato's arm deteriorated, the family attempted to cover the intolerable stench with fragrances and essences, which increased stress. Living at home became untenable. His gangrenous arm's unrelenting agony and stink made it impossible for him to sleep next to his wife. The house was split, and the family, especially the kids, suffered watching their father physically and psychologically decline. Though he became somewhat depressed, Donato's faith in his enigmatic pals stayed unshaken. Sleepless hours were spent by him longing to hear the voice that had once promised recovery. The voice did not come back. Days went by in agony. The family, in agony, attempted to get Donato to go to the employee hospital in Lima for medical care. Eventually, Donato consented to travel to Lima, more to placate his wife and supporters than by his own desire. Surgery was planned to remove his arm upon arrival. Donato, though, had a peculiar notion that his pals would one day bring back the arm and he could retain it after amputation. He chose to leave the hospital when he found the procedure did not function that way and the arm could not be saved. For many, Donato's departure appeared ludicrous. Still, he was sure that his pals would make good on their promise to cure him if he could retain his arm, wearing a hospital gown. Donato drove home on a truck by himself. Many people were let down. Seeing him in that condition, his wife and colleagues gave up all faith in him and chose to cease providing support, so abandoning Donato entirely in his fight. For Donato and his family, the next months were a living horror. His arm's state kept becoming worse, with a growing intolerable odor. Facing the nightmare of exposed bone, parched skin, and detached nails, his brother William handled changing his bandages. Donato held on to the idea that his friends would cure him despite all. For months later, with his arm in an irreparable condition, his belief in those who once pledged assistance was unbroken, showing how closely faith and despair may mix in a suffering mind. By October 1983, the crisis had reached its most catastrophic phase. After 4 months of his arm in advanced decay, Donato started to exhibit signs of losing hope. Though he was a tough and almost unbreakable guy, Victoria discovered him weeping one early morning, a very surprising event considering his background. She thought his friends had left him, which broke him as he had relied on them completely. Desperate to comfort him, Victoria said he should choose on his health after enjoying his birthday. When the day arrived, Donato took an unusual action rather than going to the hospital. He chose to see a nearby reporter. Donato's lack of resources to record his condition helped to shape this choice. He was certain his arm would be cured by the next day and therefore wanted to leave a record of his circumstance. Though doubtful and with some sarcasm, the journalist consented to snap a few pictures. The condition of Donato's arm was so bad that the reporter even advised him to rush to the hospital. Donato left south after the visit for the Callahan de Huelas. His son, following his mother's directions, chased him for a while but finally lost sight of him. Donato vanished in that way, leaving his family in great doubt. For the family, this was a turning point where hope started to fade and reality became more unavoidable. Donato showed up at the front door of his house on October 6, 1983, one day following his enigmatic disappearance, to astonish and comfort his wife Victoria. But he was unusual in some way. Victoria found Donato's oddly calm look and apparent height increase disturbing. Donato just requested something to drink, clearly unconcerned about the suffering his absence had caused, as if nothing remarkable had occurred. What came next, however, totally shocked the family. Victoria was slicing watermelon for Donato when their daughter's shriek shattered the calm. Victoria dashed to the kitchen to see her kid shaking and pointing at her father's arm. Initially, Victoria was concerned that Donato had finally lost his arm. Removing his coat, Donato showed something illogical all around. His arm, which had been in an advanced state of deterioration, suddenly looked magically recovered. Donato even more surprisingly started moving the arm, something apparently unachievable given its previous state. Though with a unique oddity, the arm once lifeless with exposed bone and rotting flesh now looked far healthier. From the elbow down, it appeared as though he was wearing a glove. Many people felt the arm was not really his. It moved with an unsettling restlessness, as though it had a life of its own, further heightening the family's uncertainty and terror. Donato's arrival with what seemed to be a new arm set off a mixed response. Though the family was glad to find him alive, the unknown occurrence scared them as well. The community, already aware of the case, started murmuring that Donato had made a contract with the devil as the event's character challenged any medical or logical explanation of the time. When the family saw a strong, heated, burnt smell coming from the repaired arm, the scenario became even more disturbing. Victoria called the new arm, which was significantly lighter in hue and had fine hairs, one that looked like a baby's. But for many who saw it, the arm inspired great dread rather than respect, especially after Donato easily raised a 200-kilogram engine with his new arm, contradicting any reasonable rationale. Speculation of a bargain with the devil grew. Including the one who had recorded the arm's prior condition, reporters gathered to catch the event. Though obtaining photographic evidence at the time was challenging, it required developing images in Lima. The information collected turned out to be quite important. Though the pictures were restricted and hazy, the journalist's account of the arm's previous condition gave the incident some plausibility. These are the specifics of Donato's arm healing as related by him and a witness.